The nursing home hallway smelled of disinfectant. I stopped at my father's door, an old red toolbox heavy in my hands. Through the crack, I heard his voice. Jim. Jim, get up. Please. No. Father was there again. Vietnam, 1968. I've lived 58 years, a successful life, but I didn't know who my father was, the man who never once said he loved me. I thought that was all there was to him, until I opened this toolbox. Let me take you back 3 weeks. April in Chicago was still chilly. I was reviewing quarterly reports in my office. Lake Michigan, visible through the window in a hazy blur. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. The phone rang, an Ohio area code. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Is this Michael Harrison? This is Street, Mary's nursing home. You're listed as the guardian for Robert Harrison, correct? Yes, that's right. What's going on? Your father has been diagnosed with dementia. It's early stage, but he can no longer live alone. We recommended facility admission, and he agreed. We need his guardian to come in. Dementia. The word pierced my ears, but strangely, I felt nothing. I couldn't even remember when I'd last spoken to my father. After Mom's funeral, we'd exchanged maybe 1 or 2 calls a year, none lasting more than 3 minutes. I understand. I'll come out this week. I hung up and stared out the window for a long time. I knew I had to go, but I couldn't make myself move. The place I'd avoided for 40 years, Ohio, Youngstown, my father's house. That evening, my wife Carol asked me, "When are you leaving?" "Friday. I'll sort things out over the weekend and come back." "Should I come with you?" "No, it's fine. I'll be quick." Carol looked into my eyes quietly. After 30 years together, she knows things without being told. "Michael, this time, really talk to him, to your father." "Talk about what?" "There's nothing to say." "There is. I know there is. You're just not saying it." I didn't answer. "Nothing to say?" "No. There was too much. I just didn't know where to begin. And honestly, I didn't want to." Friday, I flew out of O'Hare, an hour and a half to Cleveland. From there, an hour's drive to Youngstown in a rental car. The scenery grew familiar. Endless farmland, rusted factory smokestacks, small towns that once thrived but now lay in decline. This was the place I'd left, the place I'd fled from. When I pulled up in front of my father's house, the sun was already setting. A 2-story house with peeling white paint that had to be 20 years old. The lawn had grown to my knees, and envelopes spilled from the mailbox. It hit me then my father had been living alone. For 3 years after Mom passed, he'd been living like this. The key was under the flower pot. Same place as 40 years ago. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Time had stopped inside the house. The living room sofa, the salt shaker on the dining table, the picture of Jesus on the wall. Everything was exactly as it was when I left 18. No, one thing had changed. Dust had gathered everywhere, and Mom was gone. I went to the kitchen. The refrigerator held spoiled milk and moldy bread. Unwashed dishes were piled in the sink. I sighed and looked out the window. I could see the old shed in the backyard, the place my father went every evening. As a child, I hated that shed. After work, Father would eat dinner and disappear into it. On weekends too. I thought he preferred being with his tools over being with his family. I went upstairs. My room was at the end of the hallway. When I opened the door, I was hit with a wave of being 18 again. My high school diploma still sat on the desk. My Ohio State acceptance letter was right beside it. I stood there for a long moment. I remembered that time, the day I got my acceptance letter. I was so happy. I was going to be the first person in our family to go to college. I ran to my father. "Dad, I got in." "Ohio State." Father glanced at me, then turned away without a word. Walking toward the shed, he said only this: "Why bother with college? Just work at the plant." That was it. No congratulations, no encouragement. That day, I made my decision. I would leave this house. I would get away from this man. I would never look back. And that's exactly how I lived. I put the diploma down and looked out the window. Darkness was falling. I thought I should go down to the basement. If I was going to clear out the house, I'd have to start there. I descended the stairs and flicked on the light. Under the dim bulb, dusty shelves came into view, and there in the corner was the one thing my father never let anyone else touch, the red toolbox, a battered metal box with peeling paint and dented corners. I'd heard he bought it in 1960, when he first got the factory job. Over 60 years old. I crouched in front of it. Should I open it? I hesitated, then lifted the latch. The moment I lifted the lid, the smell of oil and metal hit my nose. Wrenches, screwdrivers, pliers, all neatly organized, just like my father. But beneath the tools, there was something else, a bundle wrapped in cloth. I carefully pulled it out and unwrapped it. A stack of faded letters, old black and white photographs, and a set of dog tags. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Father was in the military? He went to war? I'd never heard about it. Not once in my life had anyone told me my father had been to Vietnam. I picked up the envelope on top of the stack. It was postmarked 1968. With trembling hands, I unfolded the letter. It was my father's handwriting. The paper had yellowed, and there were stains here and there. I read from the first line slowly. To Mary, March 15, 1968. Da Nang, Vietnam. Mary, my mother's name. Jim died today, right beside me. We went out on patrol and walked into an ambush. Bullets were flying, and Jim pushed me down. Then he fell. I was holding him, and the blood wouldn't stop. I steadied my breathing and kept reading. You know what Jim said at the end? When you get home, tell my mother, tell her I love her. That was it. He was 22, a year younger than me. My hands were shaking. I'd never heard any of this from my father. Mary, I don't know what I'm doing here. Every night I have nightmares. I see Jim's face. I should have been the one. Why am I still alive? In the middle, the writing was blurred. It looked like it had gotten wet. Were they tears? If I make it home alive, I'm not going to talk about this. Not to you. Not to the kids when we have them. This is something I'll carry alone. It's better if you don't know. The letter ended there. I couldn't move for a long time. My father's nightmares came back to me. As a child, I'd hear screaming from his room in the middle of the night. Mom would rush in, and I'd pull the covers over my head and plug my ears. I didn't know what it was. I just thought there was something wrong with him. Father had carried this his whole life. I opened the next letter, July 1968. Mary, I lost another one today. I'm not going to tell you his name. I don't want to remember names anymore. I just want to count numbers. That's the only way I won't go crazy. The next letter, November 1968. I think I can come home soon. But Mary, I'm scared. Even when I get home, I won't be the same person I was. That person is buried somewhere in this jungle. Only an empty shell will come back. The last letter, at the bottom of the stack. February 1969. Mary, I'm getting on the plane tomorrow. I'm finally going home, but promise me something. Don't push me to talk. Don't ask me to tell you about it. I need time. Maybe my whole life. Is that okay? I put the letters down. My hands were trembling too much to hold them. My father's silence was starting to make sense. I'd mistaken it for indifference. I'd resented it as coldness, but he couldn't speak. He just couldn't. I looked through the photographs. My father is a young man, smiling in his uniform. Beside him, a blond young man had his arm around him. On the back, it read with Jim. January 1968. Jim, the friend who took the bullet meant for my father. There was another photo. My father with his arm around a black man, both smiling. They were wearing factory clothes. On the back with Will, 1965. After that day. Will? That day. What did it mean? It struck me suddenly that I knew nothing about my father. I'd been his son for 58 years, yet I had no idea what kind of life he'd lived. I'd never asked, and he'd never told me. Why was that? Why had we never had a real conversation? I sank to the basement floor. The young father in the photo was looking at me, a bright smile on his face. I'd never seen my father with an expression like that. That's when the tears came. Father, I want to know who you are. It's late, but I want to know now. I looked at the black man in the photo. Well, I need to find this person. He must know something about my father. That night, I couldn't sleep. I read my father's letters over and over. And by dawn, I'd made up my mind. I would search for my father's past before it was too late. The next morning, I called my wife. Carol, I need to stay a few more days. What's going on? Nothing, just. There's a lot to sort through. Carol was quiet for a moment, then asked, have you seen your father? Not yet. Michael, I'm going tomorrow. Today I need to prepare. I didn't even know what I meant by that. I just wasn't ready to face him. Especially after reading those letters, I decided to find Will, the black man in the photo. I searched online but found nothing. 1965 was almost 60 years ago. If he was still alive, he'd be in his 80s. The GM Youngstown plant, the place my father had worked for 35 years, the plant closed in the 90s, but there had to be a retirees group. I went to the local library and asked the librarian, do you know anything about a GM plant retirees group? The librarian thought for a moment, then said, there's a group that meets in the basement of St. Joseph's Church every Thursday. I've heard they're old plant workers. It was Wednesday. I'd wait until tomorrow. That afternoon, I searched through more of my father's house. In his study, I found albums. Mom must have organized them. Photos of my father when he was young, in his factory uniform standing at the assembly line. Group photos with his co-workers. There was even one of him holding me. 1966, the year I was born. Father went to Vietnam when I was 2, and he came back when I was 4. An old newspaper clipping fell out from between the album pages, a May 1965 article from the Youngstown paper. The paper had yellowed. I read it. Racial tensions rise at GM plant. Dispute over whites only cafeteria. There was a photo with the article. Black workers protesting in front of the plant. And in the middle of the text, a familiar name. Some white workers showed solidarity with black colleagues. Robert Harrison, 26, was reportedly passed over for promotion. Due to this incident, my father's name. I read the article again and again. My father stood up against racial discrimination. He was passed over for promotion because of it. I knew nothing about this. My father had never said a word, as if it wasn't anything to brag about. As if he'd just done what anyone would do. Thursday morning I went to St. Joseph's Church. In the basement hall, about a dozen elderly men had gathered. Most looked to be in their 70s or 80s. I approached cautiously. Excuse me, is this the meeting for the GM plant retirees? One of the men looked up. That's right. Who are you? I'm Robert Harrison's son, Michael Harrison. The hall went quiet. The men looked at each other. Bob Harrison. Bob had a son? He never mentioned it. Another man said, Bob never talked about his family. That's just who he was. But son, aren't you even curious how your father's doing? I lowered my head. He's been diagnosed with dementia. He's in a nursing home. The hall fell silent again. The men's faces darkened. So, I came to ask you something. Do any of you know a man named William Black? Took a photo with my father around 1965. The man with the cane spoke up. Will Johnson? He's still alive. Lives in Columbus, I think. Want his number? I nodded. Yes, please. As he flipped through his notebook, the man said, but son, can't you just ask your father directly? I couldn't answer for a long moment. Finally, I said, he never told me anything about his past, not once in my whole life. The man nodded. Yeah, that's Bob, a man of few words. But son, you should know being quiet doesn't mean not caring. Men of that generation were just raised that way. I took the piece of paper and left the church. Written on it Will Johnson, and a phone number. I sat in my car hesitating, then finally made the call. It rang 3 times. Hello, raspy voice. Is this William Johnson? Yes, that's me. Who is this? I'm Robert Harrison's son, Michael. A long silence came through the phone, then Will's voice cracked. Bob's son. Yes, my God. Will couldn't speak for a while. Then he asked, how is Bob? Is he well? He's been diagnosed with dementia. He's in a nursing home. Another silence. Then Will said, I see. So that's why you're calling? Yes, I wanted to ask you about him. About what kind of man he was. Will said nothing for a long moment. I was about to hang up when he spoke. We need to talk in person. This isn't a phone conversation. Can you come to Columbus? Yes, I'll come. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. I'll give you the address. I hung up and rested my forehead on the steering wheel. My heart was racing. Father, I'm about to learn who you really were. It took 2.5 hours to get to Columbus. Will's house was in a quiet residential neighborhood. A single-story home surrounded by a white fence, roses blooming in the yard. I rang the doorbell, and the door slowly opened. An elderly black man who looked about 80 stood before me, white hair, wrinkled face, but sharp eyes. Michael, yes, mister. Will studied me for a long moment, then nodded. He looked just like Bob. Same eyes. Will led me inside. The living room walls were covered with family photos. Will and a woman who must have been his wife, and their children and grandchildren. Have a seat. Coffee? Yes, thank you. While Will made coffee, I looked at the photos on the wall. In one corner was an old black and white photo, a young Will in his factory uniform. And beside him was my father. That's from 1965. Will handed me a cup of coffee, the year I met your father. I took the coffee and sat down. Would you tell me about him? Will settled slowly into his sofa. Looking out the window, he spoke. 1965 was 59 years ago. I was 25 then, just got hired at the GM plant. As a black man, that was rare. And I wasn't even on the assembly line, I was in quality control. That was a good position. Will paused to sip his coffee, but there was a problem. The plant cafeteria was whites only, unofficially. But if a black man went in, things happened. What kind of things? Order something, it never comes. Sit down, nobody sits near you. Some days, your food came back with spit in it. Will's voice dropped. May 1965. It happened again. I was just trying to eat lunch. I bought a sandwich and sat down, and a few white workers came over. This isn't your seat. Get out. I didn't leave. So one of them grabbed my tray and threw it on the floor. My sandwich, just lying there on the ground. I listened, holding my breath. There must have been 50 people in that cafeteria, all white workers. Nobody helped. They all looked away, pretended they didn't see. So I just got up and walked out. What else could I do? Will looked at me, but one person followed me out. My father? Yes, Bob, a man I'd never even spoken to. He walked out carrying his own tray, and he stood next to me. Will's eyes grew moist. There was a truck in the parking lot. Bob climbed up onto the truck bed and waved me over. Sit here, let's eat together. I couldn't believe it. Bob, why are you doing this? You'll be marked too, and you know what your father said? I shook my head. A man's gotta eat. What's so hard about that? That was all. Will wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. We sat on that truck bed and shared a sandwich. Bob gave me half of his, and he didn't say another word, just sat there with me. I couldn't speak. My father, that stoic father. After that day, Bob ate lunch with me every single day. Every day, not in the cafeteria, but on that truck bed, rain or shine, snow or sleet, for 3 years until they finally integrated the cafeteria. Will got up and pulled something from a drawer, an old newspaper clipping. Look at this. The article had my father's name. Robert Harrison passed over for promotion. Due to solidarity with black colleague, Bob was passed over for 3 years because of that. He could have been a foreman. That's real money he lost, but he never complained. Not once did he say because of you to me. I put the article down. My hands were shaking. Mister, Will, why do you think my father did that? Will thought for a moment, then said, I asked him once, just once, Bob, why are you so good to me? And, you know what he said? The man beside me in the war was black, he saved my life, but when I got home I found out his brother had to sit at the back of the bus. Does that make any sense? That was all. I lowered my head, tears were coming. My father never told me any of this. He never bragged about it, he just did what he thought was right, where no one could see, even when no one thanked him. But Michael, Will looked at me. Did you know about your college tuition? I looked up. Do you mean? Will studied me carefully. You didn't know, of course. Know what? What tuition? Will sighed and sat back down. 1984. The year you got into college. When I was 18. The year I got my Ohio State acceptance letter. Do you know what was happening with Bob back then? I shook my head. When I told him I got in, he said, why bother with college? That's all I remember. Will smiled bitterly. There was a reason he said that. Tuition. Tuition? Do you know what Ohio State tuition cost back then? Over $2,000 a year. Bob's salary couldn't cover that. Not with the mortgage, the bills, your mother's medical expenses. I searched my memory. It was true that Mom had been ill back then, but I didn't know things had been that tight financially. Bob told you not to go to college, but behind your back, he did something else. What? He worked nights at a gas station. I felt the breath leave my body. What did you say? 8 hours at the plant, then dinner, then 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. at the gas station. For almost 2 years, I couldn't find words. How? How do you know this? The gas station owner was a friend of mine. He told me, hey, Bob Harrison's working at my station. Says he's putting his son through college. I didn't believe it at first, but it was true. Will gazed out the window. Bob worked 8 hours at the plant, 6 hours at the station. Went home at dawn, showered in secret, and slept for maybe 2 hours, before going back to the plant, for 2 years, and he never told anyone, not even your mother. My vision blurred. I remembered how tired he'd looked back then, how pale his face had been. I thought he was just getting older. No, honestly, I didn't even care enough to notice. But why? Why didn't he say anything? That's just Bob, Will answered, a man who was ashamed to talk about his sacrifices. And, I think he didn't want you to feel indebted. He didn't want you to think I got into college because of my father, and feel burdened by that. I covered my face with both hands. It came back to me, the day I got the acceptance letter, running to my father. Dad, I got in Ohio State. The excitement in my voice, and him turning away, walking toward the shed. Why bother with college? Just work at the plant. I thought he didn't care. I resented him for being cold, so I left home. I told myself I'd never look back, but now I understand. He hadn't turned away from me. He was crying, hiding it from his son, because men of his generation learned that showing tears was weakness. Happy, yet knowing the crushing work ahead, carrying that burden alone. I slumped into the sofa. The tears wouldn't stop. Mr. Will. Yes. I've misunderstood my father for 40 years. I've resented him for 40 years, thinking he didn't care, thinking he didn't love me. Will placed his hand on my shoulder. Bob didn't know how to say I love you. Men of that generation are all like that. My father was the same. So was I for a long time. We were taught that you don't say love, you do it. But still, just one word. Just one. I know how hard that is, but Michael, it's not too late. Bob is still alive. I looked up. He has dementia. Will he even recognize me? Will thought for a moment, then said, I don't know, but go anyway. Even if Bob doesn't recognize you, you can still speak. Whether he hears you or not, say it. Better late than never. I stood up. Mr. Will, thank you. Really. Thank me for what? Go to Bob and tell him an old friend misses him. I nodded and left Will's house. Even in the car, I couldn't start the engine for a long time. Father, I'm coming now. It's late, but I'm finally on my way. On the drive back to Youngstown, I called the nursing home. Are visiting hours open? Yes, until 7 p.m. But Mr. Harrison has not been doing well lately, just so you know. I understand. By the time I arrived at the nursing home, the sun was setting. Street, Mary's nursing home. Red brick building, white window frames. Peaceful enough from the outside. I checked the room number at reception and walked down the hallway. Disinfectant stung my nose. From the rooms I passed came TV sounds, occasional moans. Room 203. I stood in front of my father's door. The door was slightly ajar. Through the gap, I heard my father's voice. Jim. Jim, no. Don't go. Jim. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. Father was sitting up in bed. His once strong frame was thin, now his white hair disheveled. His eyes were fixed on something far away, not on me. Father. He turned his head slowly. His eyes swept past me. He didn't recognize me. Who are you? Who are you? It's me, Father. Michael, your son. Father tilted his head. Michael. Michael's just a baby, this big. He held his hand in the air, showing a child's height, about 4 years old. Father, I grew up. I'm 58 now. That's not true. Michael held my hand last night. He had a nightmare. Those tiny little hands. Father reached into the air, as if trying to hold my small hand. My heart felt like it was crumbling. I remembered then, as a child, when Father had nightmares, I'd wake up scared too. One night, I gathered my courage and went to his room. He was drenched in sweat, trembling. I just held his hand without saying anything. What did he say then? It's okay. Daddy's okay. And he'd squeezed my hand tight. I'd completely forgotten that memory. For over 40 years. Father. I moved closer. I sat in the chair beside his bed. I tried to take his hand. Don't touch me. He pushed my hand away. His eyes were filled with terror. Who are you? Are you Viet Cong? Jim. Where's Jim? He tried to get out of bed. A nurse rushed in. Mr. Harrison, it's all right. It's safe here. You're safe. While the nurse calmed him, I backed away. My father doesn't recognize me. He doesn't know who I am. I've been his son for 58 years, and in this moment, I'm a stranger. The nurse led me out into the hallway. I'm sorry, he's been like this lately. Past and present get mixed up. It's especially bad in the evenings. Then when would he recognize me? The nurse thought for a moment. Early morning, around 6 a.m., that's when he's most lucid. It doesn't last long, but if you come then, you might be able to talk a little. I understand. I left the nursing home and stood in the parking lot. The sun had fully set. Under the streetlight, my shadow stretched long. I put it off for 40 years. I lived 40 years without having a real conversation with my father. I had chances to reconcile and I avoided them. I could have understood and I looked away. And now I'm finally here, after learning everything, after realizing what kind of man he was, how much he loved me. But he doesn't know who I am. I collapsed against the parking lot wall. It's too late. I'm too late. The tears poured out. I couldn't stop them. Father, there's something I want to say, that I finally understand, that I'm sorry, that I love you. Just once, please, just once, hear me. Then the nurse came out to the parking lot. Seeing me crying, she approached carefully. Are you all right? I nodded. I wasn't all right, but the nurse said, come at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Your father will be lucid. Say what you need to say then. Better late than never. I clung to those words. Better late than never. I understand. I'll be here tomorrow. I went home and down to the basement. I sat in front of the red toolbox, the thing my father had kept beside him for 60 years. I'll bring this tomorrow. Maybe he'll remember. Maybe this box will bring him back to the present. I held the toolbox in my arms and stayed awake through the night. I opened my eyes at 5 a.m. I don't know if I actually slept. I drifted in and out until the light through the window turned pale. I showered and changed my clothes. I picked up the red toolbox and left the house. The April morning air was cold. When I arrived at the nursing home, it was just before 6. The reception desk was empty. I walked quietly down the hall to room 203. I knocked on the door, no answer. I opened it a crack and looked in. Father was sitting by the window. He was looking outside, watching the dawn break across the sky. Father. He turned his head slowly. His eyes were different, not the confused eyes from last night. They were clear, sharp. Father looked at me for a long moment. Michael, my heart stopped. Yes, Father. It's me. Michael, what are you doing here? He recognized me. I set the toolbox I'd been carrying on his bed, his eyes fixed on it. I brought it from home, your toolbox. With trembling hands, Father touched the toolbox. 60 years. I've had this 60 years. I know. I sat in the chair across from him. Father, there's something I need to tell you. Father looked at me, still with those clear eyes. I opened the toolbox. I took out the letters and photographs. These were inside too. Father's expression hardened. You saw them? Yes. Silence fell. Father looked out the window. Those, I never showed anyone. I know, you kept them to yourself your whole life. Why? Why did you never tell me? Father was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke in a low voice. It wasn't something to tell. What happened in the war? You don't bring that home. But Father, it was so hard for you. The nightmares. I remember them when I was little. You screamed every night. Father lowered his head. That's why. I'm sorry about that. For what? Must have scared you. A father acting like that every night. So I kept my distance. Didn't want you to think your father was a frightening man. I was struck speechless. He hadn't pushed me away. He'd been trying to protect me, afraid his darkness would spread to me. Father, I met Mr. Will. Father raised his head. Will Johnson? Yes. He told me about 1965. About the cafeteria. About how you followed him out. Father smiled bitterly. Will told you about that? Why didn't you tell me? It was such an incredible thing. It wasn't incredible. We ate together. What's incredible about that? That was my father. That's how he lived his whole life, doing the right thing and saying it wasn't anything special. I brought up the gas station, and I heard about my college tuition. Father's expression shifted. What? That you worked nights at the gas station, for 2 years, without telling anyone. Father bit his lip. Who told you that? Mr. Will. The station owner was his friend. Father looked out the window. He was silent for a long time. Father, why didn't you tell me? Why did you say? Why bother with college? When you were sacrificing so much, Father spoke slowly. I didn't want you to end up like me. Do you mean? 35 years at the plant, bent back, doing what I was told, nightmares every night. That wasn't for you. You needed to be different. Desk job, wearing a suit, living clean. So I pushed you away. I wanted you far from me, somewhere better. Tears welled in my eyes. Then why did you never say you loved me? Just once, just one word was all I needed. Father looked at me. His eyes were glistening. I didn't know. Didn't know what? That I was supposed to say it. I thought, if I showed it with my actions, that would be enough. Earning money, fixing the roof, taking you to the hospital when you were sick. I thought you'd just know. Father reached out with a trembling hand and took mine. How rough those hands were, marked by 35 years of labor. I never said it to your mother either. 50 years together. Not once. I gripped his hand tightly, but that wasn't enough. Was it? Father said. I should have said it. To you, to your mother. I should have, but... Father's eyes filled with tears. I was seeing my father cry for the first time in my life. I'm sorry, Michael, son. He gripped my hand harder. Love. Father was trying to say it. His lips trembled. Love. The complete sentence wouldn't come. A word he'd never spoken in 82 years wasn't going to come easily now. I didn't wait. Father. I do too. Father looked at me. I love you too. It's late. But I finally understand. Thank you for everything, for working nights at the gas station, for coming home from the war, for raising me." More tears rolled down Father's face. "I resented you for being so silent. I thought I wasn't loved, but I was wrong. You weren't just saying love your whole life, you were doing it. I just couldn't see it. I'm sorry." Father touched my cheek with a trembling hand. "Good, son." And then his eyes began to cloud over. The clarity started to slip away. "Father?" Father murmured. Jim's waiting. I have to go." He was drifting back into the past. The lucid moment was ending. I held him, his thin, 82-year-old body, the body that had worked all its life for his family. "It's okay, Father, you can go. I understand now. I understand everything." Father patted my back awkwardly, like he used to when I was little. "Good son, good." Those were his last words. Father passed away that night. In his sleep, peacefully, the nurse told me. That lucid morning was his last. It seemed like he had something he needed to say. I knew what he'd been trying to say. "I love you." In 82 years, he never finished that sentence. But it was okay, because I had already heard it. In 35 years of labor, in those late nights at the gas station. In the back he turned to hide his tears. My father's love had been there all along. A week later, we held my father's funeral. April in Ohio was still chilly. About 30 people gathered in the small church, Father's old colleagues, neighbors, and family. Beside me were my wife Carol and our daughter Emily. Emily was 28, Father's only granddaughter. The minister spoke. He said Robert Harrison was a man of few words, but he showed his love through his actions. I nodded. After the service, I greeted the mourners in the churchyard. That's when I spotted an old man with a cane. It was Will. "Michael, Mr. Will, thank you for coming." Will hugged me tightly. For an 80-year-old, his arms were strong. "Bob, he's really gone?" "Yes." Will wiped away tears. 59 years ago, when he walked out of that cafeteria, my life changed. Because of him, I didn't quit. I went on to be a union rep. I'm still alive because of him. He never mentioned you to me. That's Bob. Never talked about the good things he did. But Michael, remember this? Your father was a hero, no matter what anyone says. I nodded. I know that now. Will patted my shoulder and walked away. After the funeral, I went home. My father's house, now empty. Emily asked me, "Dad, what was Grandpa like?" I thought about it. What should I say? That he was stoic? That he didn't talk much? No, he was a hero. A hero? Yes, nobody knew. I didn't know. But Grandpa didn't just say love his whole life, he did it. And I found out too late. Emily held my arm. "But you did find out. Isn't that what matters?" I looked at my daughter. There were tears in Emily's eyes. "Yes, that's what matters." I went down to the basement. The red toolbox was right where I'd left it. I sat in front of it. I opened the toolbox. I put the letters and photos back among the tools. Then I pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. I picked up a pen and wrote, "Dear Father, as I write this, I realize something. Why you never spoke. Your generation was taught that love isn't something you say, it's something you do. For 58 years, I didn't understand that. I mistook your silence for indifference. I spent 40 years resenting you. But now I know. 35 years of bending over the assembly line, that was love. Working nights at the gas station, that was love. Having nightmares but never letting on, that was love. You never finished saying I love you. But it's okay. I understand now." That message was already there. In 35 years of work, in those late nights at the station, in the back you turned to hide your tears. "Thank you, Father, and I love you." It's late, but now I can say it. Your son, Michael. I folded the letter and placed it in the toolbox. I closed the lid. Months passed. I didn't sell my father's house. I came down every weekend. I mowed the lawn, washed the windows, fixed the roof, just like Father used to. One weekend, Emily came with me. I took her down to the basement. We sat side by side in front of the red toolbox. "What's this?" "Your great-grandfather's toolbox, over 60 years old." I opened it. I took out the tools one by one and explained them. "This is a wrench, Grandpa used this for 35 years. With these hands, he built thousands of cars. And with these hands, he protected his family. Emily touched the tool gingerly. It's heavy. Yes, it's heavy, but that's why it matters. Emily asked, "Are you going to use these, Dad?" I smiled. "No, I'm going to give them to you. Someday." Me. "Yes, there's something you need to remember." "What's that?" I gazed at the toolbox. Love isn't just something you say. Sometimes it's 35 years of work. Sometimes it's standing watch through the night. Sometimes it's just being there, without a word. Emily nodded. "And one more thing. When you think it's too late, say it anyway. I love you." "Thank you. I'm sorry." "It's okay to be late. It's better than never saying it at all." Emily held my hand. "Dad, I love you." I hugged my daughter. "I love you too, Emily." Through the small basement window, sunlight streamed in. It settled on the red toolbox. My father never finished the sentence, "I love you." But it's okay. I know now. It was already there. In 35 years of work, in those late nights at the gas station. In the back he turned to hide his tears. From beginning to end, my father's love wasn't spoken, it was shown. And now, finally, I can pass that on to my daughter. In words, better late than never. The end.